Okay, this is a video for both algebra students, pre-algebra, and even 6th grade on integer operations. And as you may recall, integers are all the whole numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., and their opposites, so -1, -2, -3, -4, so forth. So basically, it's the negative and positive numbers that we talk about, whole numbers and their opposites. Now, integer operations tend to bother some people, but the rules for them are actually quite simple. So, there are, of course, 3 or 4 operations. We can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So I'm going to go through all those, the rules for both of these, and how I would learn to do this is apply these rules, okay? And then once you apply these rules, you're going to get a feel for it, and you're going to be able to solve these problems very quickly. So the toughest is addition, and that's where we're going to begin with. Subtraction just takes you back to addition, and we'll see how that's done. The subtraction rule is 3 words. And multiplication and division are really easy. Okay, so here we go. We'll start with the toughest, and we'll see that it's not really that tough. So addition of integers. So I'm going to put addition. And it's a 2-part rule. It depends on whether they have the same sign or whether they have different signs. Signs here. Signs. You should write this down also. The rule if the 2 numbers have the same sign. So by that I mean is that -5 plus -4. They both have the same sign. Okay? The rule is to add their absolute values, and the second part of it is give the answer the sign the numbers have. Okay, so that's same sign. So let's see how it works. Here's our example. -5 plus -4. Well, we add their absolute values. So if saying absolute values scares you, think of you add them ignoring their signs. So I add 5 plus 4. 5 plus 4 is 9. And then I give the answer, 9, the sign the numbers have. Since they're the same sign, they're going to have one sign, negative here. So the answer is -9. Well, let's try it with another one here. Let's try it with something you learned in 1st grade, because it better get the same answer that you learned in 1st grade. So let's say we have, I'm going to move this here, 2 plus 3. Well, we're going to add the absolute values. So the absolute value of 2 is 2, and the absolute value of 3 is 3. And in other words, we add them ignoring their signs, and we get 5. And we give the answer the sign the 2 numbers have. The 2 numbers have a positive sign, so it's a positive. I could put a plus there, but I don't need to. Okay? So that's the rule regarding addition with the same sign. Well, it's not much more difficult for different signs. So with different signs, here's an example. Let's say we have -5 plus 4, a positive 4. Well, the rule here is we take the difference of the absolute values and, that's values at the end there, and give the answer, the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. Again, you should write that down too, and if you need to pause it for a while to do that, do that. So, now let's see what we do. Take the difference of the absolute values. Another way of saying that is I have two numbers here, 5 and 4. I'm going to ignore their signs, and I'm just going to take the bigger one minus the smaller one. So I'm going to go 5 minus 4. And I get a 1. So that's the first part of this rule. I'm going to take the bigger number and subtract the smaller number, ignoring their signs. And then I go back to the second part to see what sign to give this answer 1. And so it says, give the answer the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. Well, I have a negative 5 and a 4. Which of those which has the greater absolute value? And the answer is negative 5. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5. The absolute value of 4 is 4. 5 is bigger than 4. Or another way to look at it, the easier way to look at it, is look at the two numbers, ignore their signs, and which is bigger? And the answer is 5. And 5 has a negative sign, so I give it a negative. Actually, I shouldn't put it there because 5 minus 4 is not negative 1. Our answer to our whole problem here, though, is negative 1. Okay? So that means nothing there. Okay, so that's different signs. Let's practice a little bit with addition. Let's say I have negative 13 plus negative 7. Same signs. I'm going to add the two together. I get 20. I'm going to give them the sign that they have, negative 20. Let's say I have negative 13 plus 7. Different signs. I'm going to take 13 minus, I'm not even going to put equal there. I'm going to take 13 minus 7 is equal to 6. I look back at these. 13 is bigger than 7. It has a negative sign. My answer is negative 6 for this one. So negative 13 plus 7 is equal to negative 6. Let's say I have 13 plus a negative 7. Well, different signs. I'm going to take the difference in the absolute values. So I take 13 minus 7, I get 6. I look at the two numbers, and I get 13 is bigger than 7, so it's positive 13, so my answer is a positive 6 there. So that's how it works. It will also work the same way with decimals and fractions and so forth. You know, you have to know the rules for adding and subtracting decimals and the rules for adding and subtracting fractions, but as far as the sign part of it, this is how you work it. Okay, so that's addition. Now let's go, if you want to pause and do some addition problems now, you can do that. But if you're ready to go on, we're going to do a subtraction. Here's the rule for subtraction. Get ready to write this down. Subtraction, let me get my paper lined up here. Subtraction, here's the rule. Drum roll, please. We're going to add the opposite. That's it. That's the rule. So, let's take one. Let's take 3 minus 7. Well, we're going to add the opposite. So right now it's 3, a positive 3, minus a positive 7. Well, we're going to convert this to a problem where it's going to be 3. Instead of subtraction, I'm going to add. Instead of a positive 7, I'm going to do the opposite of positive 7, which is negative 7. That's our new problem. Huh. That problem is a addition problem now. So now we go back to our addition rules that you should have written down. And for addition, we say, okay, are these the same signs or different signs? Oh, these are different signs. So I'm going to take the difference of the absolute values. In other words, I'm going to take 7 minus 3, and I get 4. And then I go back to the two numbers and decide which sign I'm going to give that answer for. It's 3 is less than 7, or 7 is bigger than 3, and 7 is the bigger one. It has a negative sign, so my answer is negative 4. So now I know that 3 minus 7 is negative 4. That's my answer. Okay, here's another one. 7 minus 3. You had problems like that in probably first grade, I'm guessing. Now, we better get the same answer. It's subtraction. The rule for subtraction is I'm going to add the opposite. So I go 7. It was subtraction, now it's addition. It was a positive 3, now it's going to be a negative 3. Okay? The rule for addition is with different signs. Is we subtract the two numbers, and take the bigger one minus the smaller one, ignoring the signs is another way to say it. A better way to say it is the difference in the absolute values, and we get a 4. We go back to these two numbers. 7 is bigger than 3. We're going to give it the sign of the 7, which is positive. Our answer is plus 4 here, or positive 4. Okay, now here's one where it looks a little odd, but it's actually really easy once you get used to it. Let's say I have 7 minus a negative 3. Yeah, put in parentheses there just to emphasize that it's minus a negative 3. Well, the rule is I'm going to add, what's subtraction? Now it's addition. The opposite of negative 3 is positive 3. And then now I go back to my addition rules. I have 7 plus 3. I'm going to add, it's same sign, so I'm going to add them, give them the sign that they have, which is positive, and 7 plus 3 is 10. Once you get to 7 plus 3, the rules that you used in first grade still apply, so you can just come up with 10 also. Let's do another one. Let's say I have a negative 7 minus a negative 3. Okay, well, I'm going to add the opposite. And now I have an addition problem. I have different signs. So I'm going to subtract the two. So I go 7 minus 3 is equal to 4. Look back at the two numbers. 7 is bigger than 3. So looking back at their absolute values, 7 is bigger than 3. 7 has a negative sign. My answer is negative 4. So negative 7 minus a negative 3, or which is the same as plus a positive 3, is equal to negative 4. So whenever you're doing these, when you see some number minus a negative, I'm going to put 12 here. So 3 minus a negative 12, minus a negative always becomes plus a positive. So this is always 15. So again, the rule for subtraction is you add the opposite, then you're going to go back to your addition rules. Okay? So as far as remembering rules, subtraction's really easy. And then the rule that you really have to remember is after you add the opposite, you go back to the addition rules. Now, for the really easy ones, we go to multiplication and division. Let's just do it with two numbers now. So this is multiplication first. So you should write this down. And we're going to multiplication of two numbers. So here's the rule. Same sign. Answer positive. Different signs. Answer negative. Pretty easy, right? Well, let's see. Let's apply it. So let's say I have same sign. Well, let's try something that you had back in third grade. 3 times 2. We're going to multiply them, and we get 6, and our answer is positive. That's true. Okay. Well, I'm saying negative 3 times negative 3, let's go negative 2 to keep it similar. So negative 3 times negative 2, same sign, the answer is going to be positive. So this is going to be 6 also. Now let's say we had different signs, like negative 3 times 2. The two signs are different. We go, it's going to be negative 6. The answer is negative. Guess what? With division, it's the same rule. Again, we're dealing with two numbers. I'll talk about more in two numbers in a moment. If I have, let's say, 8 divided by 2, so again, the rule's the same signs, the answer is positive, and different signs, the answer is negative. Okay, so let's go back to that. 8 divided by 2, same signs. We do the division, and we get 4, and it's a positive answer. Let's say we have negative 8 divided by negative 2, same signs. The answer is going to be 4, positive, because we said that's the rule. Okay? If we have, let's say, negative 8 divided by 2, different signs, we're going to get a negative answer, so our answer is negative 4. If I have if I have positive 8 divided by negative 2, again, different signs, my answer is going to be negative. It's going to be negative 4. So multiplication and division are really easy. Okay. Now I'm going to go with multiplication and division of more than two numbers, and we can make more of a general rule with this. But I always remember the two-number one too, because usually you have two numbers you're multiplying or dividing, and you can always do it two numbers at a time if you just want to follow the two-number rule. But let's look at this. Let's say I have a whole series of numbers. Like let's say I have negative 2 times negative 2 times 3. Well, I can do these two at a time, and I get negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4, and then 4 times 3, both the same sign, the answer is going to be 12. But let's do another one. Let's say I have negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 3. Well, I would go 4, because negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. The signs are the same. And then I have 4 times a negative 3, different signs now. My answer is going to be negative 12. Now, you could keep trying this. Let's do negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. And this is going to be negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. And this is going to be negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Same signs, so it's going to be a positive answer. And then I can multiply these, and my answer is going to be 16. Well, let's look instead at negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. And so this is going to be 4 times 4 times negative 2. Well, 4 times 4 is 16 times negative 2. I'm going to get a negative 32. So those are using the rules I've already known, but let's look at this. We can generalize this, because if you notice that if I have an even number of negative signs, here I have 2 negative signs, no, not 2 negative signs, I have 3 there. I have 4 negative signs here. If I have an even number of negative signs, my answer will be negative. Sorry, I'm working at home and the fan is on and it's moving the page sometimes. So if I have an even number of negative signs, my answer will be, I made a mistake. My answer will be positive. Sorry about that. So if I have an even number of negative signs, my answer will be positive. But now let's look at where I haven't proved this, but this is the rule. I have an even or an odd number of negative signs here. Odd number of negative signs. I have -2 times -3 times -3. 1, 2, 3 negative signs. Odd. So if my answer was negative, here's another example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negative signs. Odd number. So an odd number of negative signs, and my answer was negative, and that's always going to be the case. If I have an odd number of negative signs, my answer will be negative. Now, I want to go through just one more thing on this one. I'll leave that up a little bit, so if you want to copy that down. So, an even number of negative signs, my answer will be positive. An odd number of negative signs, my answer will be negative. By the way, this applies also to division. So, just like it applied to multiplication, this is the same rule for division. Now, one other thing I want to do, if you look at like this, other ways say -2 times -2 times -2 times -2 times -2 is that's -2 to the 5th power. And here this is odd, so my answer is going to be, I still have to do 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 5 times over. So that's 32, and my answer is going to be negative because this is odd. Now, and then likewise 2 to the 4th is going to be, well, let's say -2 to the 4th power is going to be 16, okay, because it's an even number here. Now, here's a little tricky thing that I want you to look at. If you saw how I wrote that, I wrote -2 raised to the 4th power, okay? That's -2 times -2 times -2 times -2, which is equal to a positive 16, because it's an even number. Notice, however, that if I have -2 like this, and this like this raised to the 4th power, this is not in parentheses. The negative sign is not raised to the 4th power. The only thing that's raised to the 4th power is 2. So what I have here is 2 to the 4th, and 2 to the 4th is 16, and outside of that I have this negative sign, and so that's just outside there, so this answer is -16. So that's just a little tricky thing when you have exponents in negative numbers. If you want the negative number raised to the power, you put it in parentheses. If the negative sign isn't raised to the power, then it's not in parentheses. So these are two different numbers, and you'll have a problem like that on the test, at least one problem like that on the test. So make sure you're aware of that. If you have any questions about it, let me know. And with that, I will go ahead and end this video.